This is one of my more unusual reviews, but hey, what you see is what you get. EXMORTIS is a series of point-and-click flash games created by Ben Leffler. You can play them all on Newgrounds, so if you can play flash games at all, well, you're set. I'll try not to give too much of the story away, but enough chat, let's get on with this. In EXMORTIS 1, you wake up in the woods with no clue how the heck you got there, shrugging off earlier experiences as a dream. It's dreadfully cold outside, so you seek refuge in a nice secluded house in the middle and nowhere to ride out for the night. Once you're in the house, all you can do is explore, rummage through things, and unravel an inescapable terror that'll soak your pants till your body is a dried husk that has been depleted of all bodily fluids. Okay, I'm exaggerating just a bit, but needless to say, this house is scary as shit and dreary as frack. It's a simple game that shouldn't take very long to complete, but if you take the time to indulge in the writings you see laying around here and there, you'll find the makings of a fantastic ghost story as you learn about the true power of EXMORTIS. There are some pretty graphic visuals, but even without the gore, the atmosphere is overwhelmingly grim. You won't find a lot of jump scares, if any. It's all about the vibe you get from this place. It's ambient, isolating, claustrophobic, and even otherworldly at times. It's also a very quiet game. There's no music, and the atmospheric sound effects make it hard to decide whether you should feel content or nervous when it seems like you're alone. At one point you pick up an axe, but it's mostly used to clear debris that's in your way, and you can't be sure you'll ever have to use it against an enemy of some sort. The bedroom in particular is my favorite part of the house. It's just so small and cozy, with a low ceiling and quaint furniture, and you're away from all the scariness found throughout the rest of the house. But then you see the blood on the bed. The visuals are mostly just a bunch of old photos of creepy places with various special effects added to bring them to life. I've seen this done in some other games, but never with this much finesse, and in such a palpable, powerful way. These graphics aren't nearly as good as in the other two games, but that doesn't hold it back one bit, and only shows how the others improve. If you've never experienced something quite like this before, there's no way to prepare yourself for EXMORTIS. Go check it out if you want a good fun scare. EXMORTIS 2 is where shit really hits the fan. Like a personified flood of concentrated death raging across the land, EXMORTIS has consumed the world and decimated our civilization. Only a few humans are still alive, and it won't be long before we're completely extinct. You are the only person with the means to drive back these evil forces in the time you have left. It's a lot like the first game, though with better graphics and a little more to play around with than last time. At one point you even get to play Sudoku. The scariness has been ramped up to 11. The visuals are even more overwhelmingly nightmarish than in the first game. The blood-red sky against the lifeless foreground is like a battle of erosion on the eyes. It's a little brighter than the first game, even when you're indoors, but it's no less scary than EXMORTIS 1. In fact, it just might be scarier. There's a few really effective jump scares, but there's still a strong focus on crafting the mood X1 is known for. The story is more involved, but never intrusive or overdone. My absolute favorite moment of the entire series is in this one scene where you're in the open and the EXMORTIS draws near. You only have about a minute to find some way to outrun it before you're sucked in and beyond the point of no return. The tension of this scene is almost unbearable. It is so much fun to see the sky changing as everything darkens. I can't emphasize enough what an incredible job Leffler has done crafting one of the most effectively dispiriting and visually oppressive experiences that I've ever been exposed to. It's beautiful in its simplicity, and there's no other experience like it. Whether you're playing it or just watching someone else play it, is a hell of a ride and a great sequel to a unique game. While EXMORTIS 1 and 2 are great and all, sadly EXMORTIS 3 is where things go downhill. Oh, it's not by any means a bad game, it just doesn't stand out like the others do. The visuals are better than ever, well, mostly, but the tone is completely different. Right from the get-go, it feels more like an action movie than a meticulously crafted and subtle horror flick. It's no longer isolating because you get to fight a bunch of soldiers and whatnot, though mostly later on in the game. The visuals aren't as gloomy and moody, now very bright and colorful, and it feels more like you're still in our world rather than having stepped into some realm of demons most of the time. Even with all these ruins surrounding you, it really isn't that depressing, at least not in that delicious sort of way the others were just oozing with. There are jump scares, but they usually appear in one of the few rarely seen moody bits reminiscent of the previous games. These places are actually a lot harder to appreciate than they should be because they stand out from the rest of the game like a sore thumb, so you can't help expecting something to leap out at you, and whatever element of surprise that may have been there otherwise is dissolved. One of these almost made me laugh. On top of firearms, you also have some crazy powers including telekinesis and teleportation, which ultimately empowers you way too much, and the sense of hopelessness the other games had is lost as well. Your inventory is so huge now that finding objects that help you progress really isn't much of an accomplishment anymore. Some rooms are littered with random junk for you to stuff your pockets with. You don't even use all this stuff. This game is just needlessly cluttered. It's also a lot longer than the other two games, and there's a much bigger emphasis on puzzle solving, which shouldn't be a bad thing since it essentially means there's more actual gameplay. But while some of these are interesting, a lot of them feel like distractions from the rest of the game, and some of them are just goofy, like this one Flashing Lights memory game that reminds me of my days at kindergarten. Yeah, cute. While the visuals are mostly pretty advanced, the sprite work is really clunky. We even get a final boss that, while pretty good, is also clunky. There's also a lot more music and noise than in the others, making that classic sense of isolation even weaker. The story has a much bigger presence too, for better or worse. Early in the game, you journey to the world to sustain the EXMORTIS in the past, and see things that were alluded to in the other games. At some points you interact with other characters, and there's a lot more going on than in previous installments, all building up to a more or less epic climax. Still, it just doesn't hit me as hard as the others did. Sometimes, not knowing is better. I usually don't agree with that sentiment, but I'll make an exception here. All of these things rolled together make EXMORTIS 3 feel like a completely different game than EXMORTIS 1 and 2. The powerful, haunting atmosphere is mostly dissolved, there's a lot of unneeded clutter and minigames, and to put it bluntly, it just isn't that scary. In fact, it's pretty cheesy. I'm sure Leffler worked very hard on it, and his effort does show, but so many elements that made the other games so special are downplayed to the point where they're almost not even there this time, and it's lost the feel that made the other games so cool. At one point, you actually find a bomb that is set to go off in less than 10 minutes, and you need to get underground before it explodes and engulfs the whole town that you apparently already blew up in the opening cutscene. Come on, that isn't scary. I mean, it's still pretty tense and the stakes are high, but it's nothing compared to that scene from EXMORTIS 2. A lot of these visuals are just over the top and kind of gaudy. As a standalone game, it's okay. The puzzles are clever and on its own, independent of other games, is still pretty creepy. Just a lot less than those that came before it. I was content with how X2 ended, and I don't really need X3. If you want the whole story, go ahead and try out this game. Personally, I could have done without it. If I were to give these games a rating, I'd rate X1 a 9 out of 10, X2 a 10 out of 10, and X3 a 6 out of 10. Overall, the EXMORTIS series is pretty freaking cool. Full of great scares and having a strong, definitive feel all of its own, it's a refreshing experience unlike any other. It falls kinda short at the end, but it's a good series. I have seen a lot of scary shit in my day, but nothing quite like this. EXMORTIS really is something special. Go check it out, you'll have a swell time, if you got the guts for it. Doodles!